We are going to show you our favorite hamstring strengtheners for yogis. I'm Jenny, and this is Travis, and we are the co-founders of Strength for Yoga, where we teach yogis how to build asana-specific strength. So what's going on today with our hamstring strengtheners?
We have 6 hamstring strengthening variations for you, maybe with a couple of options for each one sprinkled in.
And some are body weight, and some involve added load like a kettlebell or something.
That's right. Some you could do in a traditional yoga context, and others will add the
Like
props
a,
that we have here.
yeah. What's our first one?
Our first one is yoga specific
Yes.
variations of a strength training exercise called a good morning. So, a good morning,
Should we show that? What a
yeah,
regular good morning is?
yeah, let's do
Let's
that.
do that.
So this particular variation of a good morning we call a goblet good morning because Jenny
Hmm.
has the kettlebell at her chest. And she performs a hip hinge, sends her hips back. And this is the bottom position is similar to a halfway lift, maybe
It
with
is
slightly
in
softer
yoga.
knees. Yep. So that is one good hamstring strengthening exercise, but not
But not,
the variations
it's not
that,
like a yoga specific one that we were going
yeah,
to cover today.
not the ones that we
But you
want to
could
show
do it
you.
too.
Very good one to do. What we're going to show you is 2 variations. The first being a Warrior One. Good morning. So
Hmm.
Jenny creates her Warrior One
So
shape in
like
her
this
lower body.
is, as yoga practitioners, we probably know, but this is warrior one with this position.
hmm And so we add the kettlebell in the goblet position, and then Jenny performs her good mornings, lowering her torso towards the floor till she feels a good stretch through her front hamstring, the back of the thigh muscles on the front leg. And yeah, so that's a nice way to strengthen and mobilize the hamstrings in a Warrior One lower
Yeah,
body.
kind of single leg, like one leg at a time.
hmm hmm
And then we have a second good morning variation.
Yes. So this is pyramid pose
And I'll
now.
show pyramid poses is normally, it's just a little bit shorter stance than warrior one, and the front leg is straight. And then usually we'll do something like arms behind and then we
Oh,
hinge.
whoa.
So that's pyramid pose or Purvottanasana normally, but today we're putting a hamstring straight because it's not that strengthening for the hamstrings
It's a good
normally. Like,
stretch for the
yes, it's a
hamstrings.
stretch,
Yeah.
but it's not really loading them significantly. So we will add load by holding our kettlebell, taking the same stance in the lower body, and then we do it, right?
hmm
So similar.
Yeah. So it is not radically different from the Warrior
Hmm.
One Good Morning, right? The difference being that in pyramid, the stance is a little bit shorter and the front knee is towards
Straighter.
straight or maybe totally straight. And so that having that knee straight is going to give you even more stretch through
Hmm.
the hamstring of that front leg.
That's right. So if you're someone who maybe lacks hamstring flexibility, the Warrior One Good Morning might be a better place to start because
hmm
the knee is bent, so you don't stretch the hamstring as much.
Right.
If your hamstrings are pretty flexible, then maybe the pyramid pose Good Morning is a good option.
Cool.
So that's like our first, we're calling all of that our first exercise for hamstring strength for yogis. So what's our second?
Our second is our classic yoga pose, Purvottanasana or reverse plank.
Hmm.
So this pose is very challenging. And
Yeah.
it's one that I think is not like super common in every yoga class, but it is a pose that we see. But it's not one necessarily that we spend a ton of time in because it's so challenging.
That's right.
And so what our suggestion would be is let's spend some more time getting comfortable with our Purvottanasana, perhaps spending more time holding the position or doing
Doing
Purvottanasana
reps.
lifts or repetitions where we raise and lower through the staff pose to start up into the top of the reverse plank. So that, as I said, is not easy to do, even though Jenny's making it look easy. So we have a couple of variations for that to make it a little bit more accessible. The first
Hmm.
being to raise the hands up on yoga blocks. So what this does is it tips the body, the angle, changes the angle of the body a little bit and makes it a little bit easier to do.
Right. So kind of lightens the load a little bit on the hamstrings. So
hmm
it's a
hmm
little less demanding than when your hands are on the ground.
Yep. And then if you wanted to take that even up a couple of notches or down a couple of notches further, maybe you could use a chair. And
Hmm.
so now she's going to do the same exercise, but she's way elevated
Yeah, my hands are much higher now.
Yep. And so that again makes it a little bit more
A
easier
little
or
more
more
forward.
accessible. But she lowers into that bottom position and lifts up into that top position with the straight line from her heels to her head.
Exactly. So this is a great place to maybe start with it,
Yeah.
especially
Oh,
if doing it all the way down on the ground is just
yeah.
like,
And I think maybe an analogy that people would be familiar with is incline push-ups.
oh
So
yeah,
we know
that's so
push-ups from the
true.
floor are really hard, but if you raise your
Yes.
hands up onto a chair or a wall, you can incline it and make it easier.
Yeah, like
So this is
this.
the analogy to that, but you're just flipped up in a face up or supine
That is
position.
so true. And like the hands elevated incline push-up, that's like usually our number one go-to for people who are trying to build strength
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
the push-up pattern. It's
Yeah,
excellent.
because the whole body shape is the same. It just, you've changed the leverage relative, that body angle relative to gravity, which makes it easier.
Precisely. So anyway, that's Purvottanasana or reverse plank. We love that for hamstring strengthening for yogis.
Mhm.
Third movement,
Our third movement is Warrior Three, which you already likely know.
this
Of course,
guy.
that's uh, a single leg balance with the torso tipped forward and the non working leg stretched out. We typically hold that with just our body weight in a yoga
For
class.
like a
So,
few breaths.
yeah, it's hard, maybe more so from a balance standpoint than
That's
it is
right.
from a strength standpoint.
That's right.
So, what our proposition would be is to do repetitions going from standing to the warrior three position while also holding a weight.
And this is also called, so we could think of this as like a loaded warrior three, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also called.
Yep. We also call this a single leg deadlift in the strength training world, or sometimes called a single leg stiff legged deadlift or Romanian deadlift. We call it stiff legged or Romanian because the working leg has a slight bend in it, but not a huge bend in it. So that's why it's a
That's pretty
stiff.
stiff
Mm-hmm.
standing leg.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's a great way to target the hamstrings on one leg at a time and moving primarily from the hips. So hip extension,
Oh, yeah.
hip flexion movement.
That one, even a lightweight, you'll
Yeah,
likely feel. Uh,
exactly.
but you could actually end up going pretty heavy with it if you get strong.
Which, yes, that could be so empowering. And it's just a great way to like step up Warrior Three and make it more meaningful and more effective in terms of actually strengthening the
Yes.
hamstrings.
So that when you return to Warrior 3, it's just like
Yes.
a walk in the park.
It's like when you do it in your normal asana flow class and
You're
it's
like,
time for
I
Warrior
did this
Three.
with 20 pounds before for 10 reps for 3 sets.
Yeah, like this bodyweight
This
Warrior
three
Three
rep, this 3 breath thing is piece cake.
is like nothing.
Yes.
What's our next? This is our fourth, right? This is our
Yes.
fourth
Our
movement.
fourth movement is what we call a hamstring bridge slide. So this is
Mm-hmm.
another one that is nice because it only uses props that we traditionally have in a yoga class. Like you might have blankets at the studio that you practice at, or maybe you have a blanket at home, or maybe you have anything that would slide on the floor,
Slide. Mm-hmm.
such as a towel or furniture sliders or paper plates, or
On
even,
carpet.
yeah, or your socks on hardwood.
Socks, yes. But
Yes.
something that can slide.
Yeah.
Because we know bridge pose, right? Like normal bridge pose in
Yep.
yoga.
So that's bridge pose. We all know bridge pose. A bridge slide is where we have our hips elevated and then we slowly slide our feet out and back in on the blanket. So as we go out, the hips come down. As Jenni pulls the heels back in, her hips bridge up. So she's actually working her hamstrings at both the knee joint and the
Yes.
hip joint because she's flexing the knee, which the hamstrings do, and she's extending the hip, which the hamstrings also do.
That's right, because the hamstrings cross both the hip and the knee joint, and this movement really targets the hamstrings at both places where they cross. And this
Yes.
is really hard also.
That is
Tends to
also
be.
harder than it looks.
Yes. But it's so potent. It's really one of our favorites.
Absolutely.
Especially because, like you said, we could just do it with tend to be able to do it with what we already have in a yoga setting.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't take special equipment. But bridge slides.
That-
What's our fifth exercise, Travis?
Our fifth exercise is the Romanian deadlift, which
Yes.
you may remember from our third exercise where we did single leg Romanian deadlifts.
That's right.
Yes. So, Romanian deadlift is a variation of a deadlift. A deadlift is an exercise where you pick a weight up off the floor. So, the Romanian deadlift or stiff legged deadlift is a version where your knees are relatively straighter. There's still a little bit of bend in them. And it's kind of like that good morning that we showed before, but instead
It
of having the kettlebell at
is.
the chest, the weight is in the hands and the arms are straight. So, the bottom position is like that halfway lift in yoga, and Jenni feels a really nice stretch through the hamstrings in the bottom position and strengthening through this full range of motion, which is helpful not only for strengthening the hamstrings, but also for lengthening or stretching the hamstrings. It's like a loaded stretch.
That's right. So it's a great combo move for both hamstring strength and flexibility at the same time. As the good mornings were also.
Mhm.
Those were also a good example of that. But yeah, you can build strength and flexibility at the same time, which we love.
Totally.
Last exercise, number
Our
6.
last exercise is a feet elevated bridge or hamstring bridge. And so we already talked about bridge pose before. We know what
Yes.
bridge pose is. Feet elevated bridge pose is a bridge pose with your feet elevated on something, a chair, a workout bench, a couch, or whatever. And what is nice about this is that it does two things. By having the feet elevated, it gives you more range of motion to work through in the bridge. It also changes the body angle, and by having the feet elevated, it tends to make it more hamstrings.
Right.
And then also by having the knees a little bit towards straighter than you would in like
Oh,
a
yeah.
traditional bridge pose where you're like,
Like if I
they say
scoot
to
back.
have your heels, like if you tapped your heels, they would be like a finger length
Yeah,
away.
like traditional bridge is like a vertical shin,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in this variation, the legs are a little bit straighter, especially at the top. And so that tends to put the hamstrings in a better position to produce force and make the
Yes.
bridge more hamstring dominant as opposed to glute dominant at the hip, coupled with the fact that you're kind of curling the heels down or pulling the heels
Hmm.
down to create traction on the chair.
Exactly. It's really one of my favorites. I really like this one. I really feel my hamstrings. And you just do it like for reps
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
multiple times until you start to get to like really feeling fatigued and worked in those
That's
muscles.
right.
Yes. So Travis, that was 6 of our favorite. We have more, but those are our 6 favorite hamstring strengtheners for yogis,
Yes.
which is such a great idea for all yogis and all humans in general to
Yes.
just work to
Of course.
strengthen this area of the body.
Mm-hmm.
If you appreciated this content, subscribe to my channel so you can stay up to date on all of the tips that I/we share.